the other day you're talking about like generational wealth and like it's crazy. Do you think like professions like do you think our civil servants can actually like create generational wealth?
I think so. And good point of view for being able to pick that up. So the whole idea is if your parent was a teacher, you don't have to be a teacher. You can be in education. And education can take on many forms. So the whole idea is not follow directly what your parent is doing. It's just they have given you skills. If your dad was a soldier, get into security. If they were policemen, get into security. You don't have to follow the career path to the dot, but get into the industry because you have a lot to learn from there. If your dad was a doctor, hey, you can be a pharmacist. Same thing.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bold Exchange. I am here with Paul Rivers. Unoirachi?
Shumba baba.
Saka Anonzi Paul Mamvura. Who are here on the Bold Exchange. You are welcome, brother man.
Thank you so much, man.
You know, in this new age of media and information, I like what you're doing, and the reason why we actually got you on the show is because we like how you actually package information and package ideas, and you know, some people may disagree, some people may agree, and you know, do you believe in polygamy? Do you think polygamy is a solution to African problems, like repopulating, and you know, like that 1:1 equation is not working proper?
To be quite honest with you, polygamy has a place within the African context. It has a place. We have the history with it as Africans. It has worked in some part for Africans. So it has a place, may not be the solution, but it definitely has a place outside of Western ideology or, you know, how we've been traditionally, or how we've been doing marriage based on romanticism and so on. It does have a place within.
Explain on that, like when you say like marriage and romanticism, and you know, like, and explain that.
We might not know this, but romanticism is actually a cultural movement that isn't very old. It started around the 1700s in France. It's an idea that love is everything, romance is everything in marriage. You must remember that previously, before that, people didn't marry for love. People didn't marry for how I feel about you. People didn't marry for butterflies in my stomach. People married for very strategic reasons, and even in African culture. If you were a king, if you were somebody, you married strategically. So romanticism is a rather new movement, actually, you know, generally with maybe world history. It's rather new. It's the idea that I can marry you based on how I feel about you. That's romanticism. And it's not even our ideology as Africans. It is the idea that love is absolutely everything in marriage.
Because I don't actually think that our ancestors were marrying for love when they were at villages waiting to raid them. You know what I mean? No. So I totally get you.
No, they weren't. They were marrying for protection. They were marrying for lineage. They were marrying for heritage. They were marrying for so many other things. It wasn't always, oh, this is how I feel about this person inside. So it's a rather new concept. And polygamy was also quite strategic, because if you were a wealthy man in pre-colonial Africa, and you wanted to have many wives, for whatever reason, be it you wanted many kids and so on and so on, it worked for either party. Let's not forget that the world was a much harsher place back then than it is now, and it made sense.
And I like the fact that you mentioned culture, right? So tell me, how does this culture fit in this world that all of a sudden is woke, and you know, people have all of a sudden have these rights? You know, I honestly do not believe that when our ancestors were trying to fight the colonialists or imperialists, they were worried about some certain rights. So what's the current state of culture as we stand in 2024?
Culture is a pendulum, right? So culture normally moves from one end to another. And right now, with everything that's happening now, we are moving to one end of the pendulum, right? And don't worry, culture will swing back. We're going to have more moments when this movement is over, and we're going to go back to more traditional values. So I always worry about people who say that culture, our culture is going the wrong way. Culture always moves and shifts. Whatever extremes you've got now, masculinity, feminism, right? Those are going to reset themselves. Because the good thing about people is that people die, and their ideas die, and their ideologies die. And new people come up with new ideas. That's how we got to here, where we are anyway. So culture generally is going to swing back. And you must also remember that culture responds to culture. So whenever you've got an aggregate of feminism going in one direction. You've got an aggregate of masculinity going in the other. So people are just reacting to each other. But this entire pendulum eventually will swing back down.
Speaking of feminism and, and masculinity, what's your take on the current state of both?
We are both in our extremes. And we are reacting to each other. I've noticed even for myself when I am scrolling on Twitter or on social media, I'm very quick to pick up the extremist stuff. The guy who's saying the extremist stuff and the lady who's saying the extremist stuff. Be it whether I'm hating it or I'm loving it, I'm very quick on it. No one is giving any takes that are neutral or productive or whatever. It's just we are reacting to each other in very extreme ways.
Is it safe to blame the algorithm for pitting us against each other?
The algorithm plays a part, but the algorithm is just a tool. The algorithm is a tool we are utilizing to what can I call it? Perpetuate the extremism. Like I was saying, I am very quick to pick up on stuff that is extreme when I'm online, and then I like it, and then the next thing the algorithm is going to bring me something similar, and I like it, or I react to it, or I comment on it, and over time, that's all that's coming on my timeline.
Can we safely say that this current crisis stems from the lack of leadership in both spaces, whether it's leadership from the male perspective and leadership from the female perspective, where you're saying, okay, I think the extremism that we're actually seeing is a cry for help or a cry for leadership or a cry for attention. Because I was having a conversation with someone, right? And it's like, it's a cry for approval. Do you feel like the void in leadership is causing this crisis?
To be honest with you, we don't have leaders in both camps that are in the middle of the line or giving productive ideas or commentary to both sides in the middle. Those voices are either not there or they're getting lost within the commentary. So what we are calling leadership right now is anybody who is the loudest in either camp. Those are the people that we're following, right? So that's become a thought leader. But somebody who's coming up with an idea. So, for example, I was featured in an article called The African Report, in a magazine called The African Report, on social ambidexterity, which is the future if we're not going to be extreme. We are all going to have to learn to be socially ambidextrous going forward. We argue on Twitter every day about who's supposed to do what. The truth of the matter is, women are learning how to be socially ambidextrous or financially ambidextrous. They are doing this and doing this on the other hand. And the same thing for men as well. And that is really the future for where everyone is going. We're going to have to learn to be able to do both sides.
And, speaking of, we mentioned culture, right? And we mentioned us just being us as Africans. And, a question came to mind. Do you feel that democracy has a place in Africa when it comes to governance systems in Africa? Do you feel like we can get to a point where we can say Africa is now a full democracy and everyone is okay with it?
Democracy in and of itself is a good idea. Amongst all the socio-political theories, democracy is a good idea in general. And it has worked to some extent. But I think we need a democracy that is fitted to the Africa that we have now. I need you to understand that the Africa that we have now is an effect. It's not the Africa that we wanted. It's the Africa that we got. It's an effect of everything else that has happened. And we need to tune our democracy to the African context. By that, I mean we have borders in Africa literally just drawn up for us.
All right.
And we have tribes separated from others, and all these things that happened, this effect, it made Africa not as homogeneous as the ideal country that you might have in a democracy theory. So we do need to fit our democracy to an African context.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, You know, I personally don't believe in democracy, right? Because I find that every institution is not democratic. It can be democratic, but I mean, it's not. I don't believe in democracy because I personally feel like it doesn't work. Personally,
What do you believe in?
I just believe. I'll be very frank with you. I believe in a vision and in dictatorship. Personally, I feel like if Mao Zedong is saying, "Yo, guys, this is how we're moving, and this is our vision for the next 1,000 years," and everyone is like, "I think this is a good idea," then, because I feel like, okay, look at it this way, right? We're probably 6 in this room, right? If you come up with a brilliant idea, and I come up with a pathetic idea, and I say, guys, let's put it to a democratic test, and then 5 guys, and then like 4 guys in here vote for me. That means that my stupid idea is gonna fly, and then your brilliant idea won't fly because we're being democratic, right?
Yeah. True.
So, like, I mean, given the fact that it doesn't exist, what's your take on that? Like, given the fact that, you know, like, it has shown that there's a lot of loopholes. Tell me one institution that's fully democratic, whether it's a country or an institution. The way you'd be like, yo, mshanda gonna kuyana 6, or it's my democratic right to feel a certain way. Tell me one institution that you find is democratic.
Nah, I can't give you an example of that. And you have a point. I will admit, you have a point. Because historically, we were not democratic. Every nation in the world, historically, was not democratic. It was a king and some subjects. It was an emperor. And historically, we were not democratic. And we've got countries and empires that managed to make something out of themselves outside of democracy.
So
it's a very new idea.
So we actually believe that probably, I personally, maybe like, you know, saying, maybe saying that I like dictatorship probably is a bit extreme, but I mean, I would rather go for guided democracy.
You know what? To be honest with you, you are not wrong. You're not wrong. Because listen, when people discovered that you could have a king who can dictate everything that we are and want as a nation, they were not crazy, right? It worked for some time. It worked. The Roman Empire was not a democracy, even though the seedlings of democracy may have, you know, started from there. But it wasn't. It became great, not because people were like, this is definitely what we should do, and we should go and conquer this nation, and let's put it to a vote. So in a way, we figured it out that it does work. But the new age or the new wave of freedoms and so on and so on and so on has made it hard for that kind of political ideology to thrive. And it will not thrive going forward.
And, you know, like, you're one of the most, because you mentioned that you were mentioned in Africa Report, right? And you know, like, being one of the most sought after consultants, how do you deal with the culture of people not wanting to buy a product that's not tangible? Because, like, how do you even sell consultancy? Like, I mean, if you're selling me water, I can say, yo, this is water. If you're selling me a service, I can be like, yo, this is guy, he does pictures, he took 3 pictures, and then they are my item. How do you sell consultancy in a culture where people don't even understand? You know, like, I always get calls, right? Where someone will be like, hey, Alex, I just wanted to pick your brain on something. And then I'm like, yo, these are my brains. Why are you trying to pick them? You know what I mean? So, like, how do you navigate in that?
Yeah. So it's very, very interesting that you also get those calls. I also get those calls a lot. I have friends who are doctors that get the similar calls. I have friends who are lawyers that get similar calls. You know, and someone who just wants, oh, doc, hey, I'm feeling this. And people, you know, ask me, I have a business idea and so on. So the idea is commodifying the idea.
All right.
It's commodifying the idea. It's realizing that when you start speaking, you are already making money for somebody. When you start talking, somebody is already gaining from what you know. The difference between any 2 companies is their ideology or their idea. The difference between 2 companies in the same industry, one makes money, one doesn't, was probably just one idea, how they want to do things. So ideas are worth money. Ideas are literally worth millions of dollars. So when people call you and say, hey, can I just have this idea? It's very hard. But you have to start commodifying and say, sorry, for me to have a conversation with you, just for me to open my mouth, it's going to cost us, or it's going to cost you this much. And have that as a commodified thing. You actually have to put a price to your time and to the time that you spend talking to someone and actually say, this is a product and I'm actually pricing it. A lot of people aren't comfortable with that, because they want to give you, we have this idea that I'm going to come in and I'm going to give you work, actual work to do, then I'll pay you. But for you to just speak to me, come on, just give me an idea. And then I'll give you the money for executing the idea. That's where people want to pay, not the idea in itself.
So tell me something, right? Like how, I have to thank the algorithm because it was the algorithm it's because of the algorithm that our producer actually found you, right? Mm-hmm. So at what point did you then say, yo, I think this thing is catching traction? At what point did you realize that, this TikTok thing? Because I'm sure when you first tried it out on TikTok, you're like, this is just play, or I'm just trying to pass time. Like, at what point do you then start, do people ask you for selfies?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
But people do come up to me and greet me and recognize me. I think, that's been happening maybe over the last 2 months or so. People do come up and say, hey, I know you from TikTok. So when I started TikTok, initially, I think if you go all the way down to my TikToks, it was just for fun. It was for fun. And then I said, hey, there's a subject that I'm really passionate about, which is marketing and business. That's what I want to talk about. And it took about 3 or 4 months for me to realize, okay, this is gaining a bit more traction than I'd intended. It's getting, I think when my videos started showing up in other places except TikTok, and people saying, hey, I saw you on this video in this group and so on and so on. That's when I started realizing, maybe this is going beyond what I had initially planned. And now I was like, okay, if I have a voice, how can I make use of my voice responsibly? How can I always say to somebody, when you have an opportunity to have a voice, even if you're talking to 50 people, you have a voice, make use of it, take advantage of it in a positive way. So I had to have my, that conversation with myself, say, okay, this thing has gained traction. How can I use it? A, for business, for myself, and B, constructively for Zimbabweans.
And, like you mentioned, there's a video that you did that I actually liked on your TikTok about an area in my constituency, Westgate. Explain to me what really happened to Westgate. And, I remember back in the day, you'd go for movies to Westgate, and now the place is just like dilapidated. And, what really happened to that place?
So what I figured out, because I overthink things, what I figured out was Westgate initially was a mall. They really had an intention to have a mall.
A proper mall, right? Not this other...
No, not the thing they've got now.
Not Kwame Nkrumah mall.
No. They really wanted to have a mall. And, it was probably going to be it is maybe the biggest mall in Zim, if I'm correct. Maybe based on the number of shops, offices, and even like land footprint.
All right.
Probably, right? And they had this idea to have a proper mall. But at some point, they figured out that just the sheer amount of land they were sitting on was gaining value, and they didn't actually have to be in the mall business. Malls are hard to run and tenants and so on. And they figured out, listen, just the land we're sitting on right now, without the building, is just accruing in value. And they're earning more from the value of the land, minus the building, every year, more than they could ever earn in rentals from an actual mall. So they don't really care about the mall or even the building. I could tell you today, they could raise down the building and they would still have a good asset on their balance sheet. They can access millions of dollars from that alone. So I don't think they actually now want to have a mall. It's a good asset on their balance sheet, and it's accruing in value every single day. You drive around everywhere in Zimbabwe. Every corner of Zimbabwe, there's buildings sprouting like at a crazy alarming rate, right? Mm-hmm. So that means that money is moving. Explain that, speak to that. Is money moving in Zimbabwe? Because like the funny thing is that when you hear and when you listen to what's being said on social media, articles and bad publicity, and then you see what's really happening physically and the cars that people are driving, and is money moving in Zimbabwe or is just a facade? Money is moving in Zimbabwe. I've been privileged to be in some rooms and hear some of these guys talking. Some of the big business guys in Zimbabwe, and they are saying there is no better opportunity. There is no better opportunity out there than being in Zim right now. Zimbabwe right now is the land of dreams, but only for those who have money. So money is moving, but it's moving amongst the people who have money. If you do not have money, nothing is moving. So while the economy in general isn't improving, people have a little bit more disposable income in Zim. And if you have money, there is no better time to be in Zim than right now.
And then, so, like, when you're saying how does that trickle down to me in inangu ndine andinakawanda, but inenge inokwana kutanga something. Ndiri panonzi pa middle class vanovataura vanongada so, but anyway, like how then does that money trickle down from the top to the middle class and the
best advice I can give you is don't tie down your money in things that are not going to bring you money.
All right.
Don't buy a stand if you can't build on it. Don't tie down your money in things. Make sure, like being in business, have liquid cash to take advantage of the opportunities that are coming. And the opportunities are coming up every day in Zimbabwe. Don't tie down your money in assets that don't bring you money. I think that's the best advice I can give you. If you have any kind of money, we have 5K, you've got 10K, don't tie it down. I know we've got this thing where we really want to build and we really want to have a piece of land, but that's simply just tying down your money. If you are in a spot where you're still trying to build wealth, don't tie down the wealth. Because if you have a house or if you buy a stand, you're not in real estate. You're just building a house for yourself. It's not a business. It's an asset, where you're just tying down money, where you need the money the most right now in this economy. It's okay. You can tie down your money after 20 years or 15 years. But for now, in an economy like this one, don't tie it down.
So I want to talk to you about like brand building as someone who's like a renowned person in marketing. Like, how do I build a brand, whether it be personal, be it a company brand? How can one build such a thing called a brand?
So let's say you want to build a brand. Do you want to do a product or a service?
Just a product.
A product.
Product. Not saying some sausage.
Okay, great. Move away from thinking about the sausages as a product. Anybody can sell sausages. Anytime. You can find sausages anywhere. What's different about yours is you're not selling them the physical sausage. You're selling them a lifestyle around the sausage. All right. So a lot of people make the mistake of saying, hey, we have the best product and we have the most technically advanced product. And the way we make our sausages, man, our factory is, but could you? Okay, that's a great product benefit, right? But you're not getting us into the details of that, you are ISO 9002 certified. Nobody cares about that. Kusimsamsana is a lifestyle benefit. It improves your life, So get to talk about everything besides the functionality of your product. Talk about everything else. Kusimsamsana, yeah. How does that make my life better? Talk about that.
All right. I get you. Mm-hmm. And so tell me something. Like, can and then when it comes to a personal brand, because like I can't build a personal brand on a lifestyle. How do I build a personal brand?
Authenticity. I always say this, and this is what I literally preach. Your life story, the things that you've gone through, those are your advantages in any room. Your authenticity is what makes you you. The things that you've gone through, the things that you do, that are uniquely you.
Like I've walked 13 kilometers to go to school. And
Yes. You once worked in a mine and you used to swim to go to school across a river. Those are the stories that...
I dug 16 crocodiles.
Yes. Those are your stories. Those are the things that make you you. And those are the kinds of things that nobody can replicate. Nobody can replicate that story for you. So when you enter rooms, right, people are looking for authenticity. They're not looking for anything generic. They're looking for someone who's got a story. I pitch a lot in my business. Pitching is literally what we do every day. And when you enter into rooms and you tell people a story, nobody can retell your story and nobody can tell it the way that you can. So authenticity, be authentic, be you. There are a lot of people who are trying to be like everybody else. Be you, do your own thing, and you're going to find your audience by just being you. Yeah.
And can one define their life for the next 50 years, or you have to succumb to other people's ideas and whatever? Can you define your next 50 years and say, yo, this is what I want to do in the next 50 years?
50 years, no. 50 years, no. You can have a general idea in your mind that this is what I want to do. Maybe this is the kind of house that I want to build, and this is the kind of legacy that I want to build. But I think you can only really define your life in spurts and say, okay, for the next 3 or 4 years, this is what I want to do, and then from then on, for the next 3 or 4 years, this is what I want to do. If people could do that, people would be doing that. But life is extremely unpredictable. So if you can just define your life in the next couple of years, you're fine.
You talked a lot about, you said you preach a lot, right? Or you pitch a lot?
I pitch a lot.
Oh, no. Speaking of preaching a lot, right?
Okay.
Tell me, do you think that the church is a pandemic? Because you'll find that some of the most wealthiest countries actually are not Christian. And you will then find some of the poorest countries have some of the most mega churches. Mm-hmm. So do you think that the church is a pandemic?
I'm gonna ask you a question.
All right.
Do you think Africa needs another church?
I mean, I'm sure. We're taking a drive with with our producer, and we saw one sprouting yesterday, right? We saw a new church and we saw somebody getting laid. So I think as long as there's demand, I think they need. Okay. I don't know. I don't think church. We need another church. I think I want this.
Okay, good. Do you think Africa needs another clinic?
Another one?
Clinic.
I think it needs dozens of clinics.
Okay. Do you think Africa needs more hospitals?
Thousands of hospitals.
Do you think Africa needs more schools?
Yes, we need more schools.
Okay, good. But we can agree we are done with churches.
Don't put words in my mouth.
Okay, cool. But we can agree that we don't need another church in Africa.
Yes, true.
If we never get another new church in Africa today, we're fine. We're okay.
Sure.
All right. So if we're tying up our resources and we're tying up our people, right, in building new churches that don't physically improve people's lives.
I bet you part on a church right now, or to gadzira speech, to collect a money fundraising to build another church.
During the time that you and I have been having this conversation, a new church has sprouted somewhere in Africa. It's true. But we don't need a new church in Africa. We don't need. If we never get another new church in Africa, we're fine. We're okay. But we need more hospitals. We need more healthcare. We need more schools. So just on that alone, that we keep coming up with churches and that don't actually improve people's lives, we are doing ourselves a disservice.
And what's wrong with that thinking? You know, like someone was even telling me the other time, if you like drive down Harare Drive, you know, like on the other side, you have people building, you have white people building like factories, shops, and businesses, industry. Then on this other side of Harare Drive, you have people turning warehouses into churches and building churches and whatever. What's wrong with our mindsets as Africans to think that we need the savior? Is it a savior complex that we need someone to save us?
You must understand how religion was brought to us as Africans. Religion was supposed to be our savior. It was supposed to be our everything. And religion got intertwined with our culture, with actually how we think and operate every single day. It's not a coincidence that people are supposed to go to church every week. It's literally going there to be taught more about religion and how to be even more religious. So the way that the way that Christianity was brought into African culture and into Africa in general, you will realize that we think we're doing the right thing by building ourselves mansions in the sky, but other people are building mansions on the ground, and they are passing on that wealth, generationally. We just don't have the right idea of what to do because we've mixed up religion. It's like how we have a lobola and we have a traditional. We have lobola and then we have a white wedding. Both are traditional weddings in some sense, but we have intertwined our culture and Christianity so bad to the point where we actually don't know what's more important: building businesses or building churches. We kind of equate it in our minds because we think building a business and building a church probably have the same value. They don't.
Okay, as someone who's into marketing, right, and as you're a consultant, like let's say I come to you and I'm like, yo, Paul, I need to build brand Zimbabwe because currently as a brand out there, we're not doing so good. right? How would you build brand in Zimbabwe? And I mean, you look at places like Rwanda. They're on the Arsenal jersey. Visit Rwanda. I mean, their publicist is working overtime because those guys are like in your face, and like Rwanda, you think it's the land of milk and honey. You look at SA, despite all the crazy statistics of the crime statistics that they have there, the murder rates, actually called the murder capital, their brand is still out there. I mean, it's how would you then build the brand Zimbabwe, and how would you go about that job of building the brand Zimbabwe?
First of all, I would have the government of Zimbabwe hire me as a consultant, and make me an offer I can't refuse. And then secondly, I would go about doing this. First of all, separate brand Zimbabwe from the Zimbabwe government. Okay? It's a people-owned brand. It's not part of tourism. It's not part of the Zimbabwe government. It's brand Zimbabwe owned by citizens, owned by the actual people. Have a board of citizens doing brand Zimbabwe, not the Ministry of Tourism, and definitely not the Ministry of Finance.
So basically, you're saying politicians mustn't be involved in this project.
Completely. Let's remove politicians and politics away from brand Zimbabwe. Brand Zimbabwe, ultimately, at the end of the day, is owned by citizens. It's owned by the people that actually live in the country. And we're selling our culture. Let's remove politics from it. Have a completely different board, not controlled by politicians, not affiliated in any way, and say, we are citizens, and now, first thing, let's build brand Zimbabwe from there. That's the first thing that I would do. And then, listen, once you have a group of individuals who are competent, who are not politically affiliated, once you start having those conversations, you're okay. I think that's the first and biggest thing we can do.
Okay, still on brand Zimbabwe, right?
Yes.
How do I become? Because you're saying, okay, let's have a people oriented brand Zimbabwe, and then that's separate from the government. Fair and fine. I love that idea. Brilliant idea, right? But how do I become part of brand Zimbabwe and sell Zimbabwe to people who don't know, who haven't been to Zimbabwe? If I, as a local, I can barely afford to actually go around. Let's speak to local tourism. Are we fairly priced in these places? You've got places where people say, yo, if you want to come here, it's 250 per head. No, I rented the room. I mean, it's not like when I'm renting a full house, I'm saying I'm living with one person. Or when I rent a house, it's $500. Whether ndakayane 15 vanogara pamba ipapo ndevangu. So where does that come from? And just explain that to me.
So you must understand that Zimbabwean tourism was never meant for locals. So Zimbabwe, on average, gets about 1 million tourists every year. For our country size and population, that's rather large. And we get a lot of big spenders because we have safaris and so on. And so Zimbabwean tourism from the get-go was never designed for locals. Remember, we're coming, I know it seems like a long time ago, but we're coming from an apartheid economic system where locals were not meant to go on holiday to Vic Falls and Vumba and so on, right? So the system was already sort of rigged against us, locals, because we were the majority of the locals. And the people that were here, that, the white farmers and so on, had the money to go and be on holiday. But it was never modeled for us. It was never even modeled for our neighbors. It was modeled against big tourism and big tourists that actually had money to spend. So from the get-go, the model that we have for tourism in Zimbabwe is flawed against us, the locals. We are at an age now where lots of people can now afford to go on holiday. It's part of something that you plan for your year. You and your family are going to go away. But the pricing systems were never modeled for us. And I think ZTA really has to rethink what that means. There was a time when ZTA had two separate pricing regimes. I don't know if that's still in fact, where if you're local, it's this much. If you're a foreigner, it's this much.
I only know that it only works on selected size national. I think the national park, right? Where when if you're Zimbabwean ID, you get a lesser fee and whatever. And then I think on public holidays, it's actually free for locals.
Yes.
If you go into the Vic Falls on a holiday, if it's a public holiday, then it's free. But carry on.
Right. So they really have to rethink everything, because if you set up a prime luxurious safari experience in Zimbabwe and you price it out of the reach of locals, you will get customers. People are willing, from other countries, are willing to come and experience that for you. And everybody has been going towards that target market. Even if you look at our road tolls, they're not meant for us. They're not meant to benefit the average Zimbabwean to be able to afford a holiday somewhere in this country. It's not. So the whole system, to be quite honest with you, you can promote local tourism as much as you want. But as long as we haven't fixed that, the fact that this was, our tourism was designed in a time and a space where we were not the primary target markets, there's nothing we're doing. The ministry can go around the country, but as long as we can't afford it, it's not going to change.
I don't want any smoke with the ministry, but anyway. And then, speaking of still on the tourism part, right? I've noticed one thing, like, you go to Vic Falls. I mean, you can get to Vic Falls at the airport, go check in your room, go to the falls. You go to the falls, you go to Boma. Okay, you can actually see everything you need to see in Vic Falls in a day. And after you see the falls, you're probably starting getting bored, and then probably you go to Three Monkeys, have a crazy burger, the dude, or whatever. So how can businesses and all those tourist resort attractions build an economy around that? Because, I mean, if I go to Sun City, I can spend the whole day doing different activities. But, I mean, the Great Zimbabwe, I'm just going to see... I mean, after 2 hours, I'm bored of seeing rocks piled on each other. How do we fix that?
You've actually brought about a very excellent example. And my thinking around that is we are sleeping on Vic Falls. Other countries know what we have in Vic Falls better than we do. We are sleeping on Vic Falls. Because the more everybody tries to go to Vic Falls to provide accommodation, nobody's thinking about, okay, so fine, if I come and see it, I spend the whole day. You've described it very well. You're going to do some rafting, the Boma dinner, the Vic Falls, Three Monkeys, and then you're done. That's it. How can we get people to spend more time and therefore more money in Vic Falls? Vic Falls has the potential to be the Cape Town of Zimbabwe, because Vic Falls, like just in terms of numbers of tourists alone. But no one is thinking about how can we make these guys spend more than accommodation, because of course in Vic Falls you can raise the price of accommodation as high as you want. I'm thinking there are probably hotels in Vic Falls where you pay $1,000 a night.
Yeah, Balajena. I think there's Balajena there.
Yeah. You can raise that up as much as you want. But as long as I've got nothing else to do in Victoria Falls, I'm gonna come to Victoria Falls for a day or two, or three at most.
And then that's why you find most of these guys will say, no, we're having a conference in Vic Falls so that they can spend it not on their term.
Yes.
I mean, like, the only time some people actually see Vic Falls is like when the Harare City Council is trying to go have a conference there and they meet there. That's when, like,
True.
people...
The distance, if I'm correct, the distance between Harare and Victoria Falls and the distance between Joburg and Vic Falls should be the same. But it costs less to go from Joburg to Vic Falls than from Harare to Vic Falls.
Wow.
Right? So... as long as that's not addressed, maybe to go back to your previous question, as long as that's not addressed, if it costs me more as a local to see my own heritage and the tourism attractions in my own country, it's not going to work. Let's have a plan where how do we get people to spend more time in an area like Vic Falls or Masvingo, like you said.
And there are actually other places that are coming up. I had the privilege of being in Nyanga. There's a place called Mountain Lakes, very beautiful place. Trust me. Mm-hmm. Like, I've never seen a place like that. It's so beautiful. It's given it's got this it's giving Table Mountain vibes. It's just like, it's chilled, it's quiet. You guys should check it out. It's called Mountain Lakes. It's one of the most beautiful places that I've seen there, and there's a lot of activity happening in Nyanga in the Eastern Highlands there, and I like that. But still, we still have the same problem that we're talking about, where when you just walk on that bridge and then there is nothing else to do.
So that's very true. So let's go by Zim stats and say, okay, we do get 1 million visitors into Zimbabwe every year. Half of those tourists are going to go to Harare because they have to. It's the administrative capital, okay? Is there much to do in Harare?
In terms of what?
No, touristic activities.
There's nothing to do in Harare.
There's nothing.
Like, even if you stay in Harare and you got kids, there's nothing to do with kids in Harare.
You see, so we locals don't even have anything to do in Harare, let alone the tourist who's trying to get a feel of the culture or anything like that. And then let alone places that are far out in the Eastern Highlands. There is nothing to do. A friend of mine said, I'm Zimbabwe, I'm Nambinga. As in terms of, if we had people that actually had capital, this would be all they're looking at.
Imagine a country like Zimbabwe with so much wealth who don't have an amusement park.
There you go. So where is the Mbingas with the monies? Because what are they spending their money on? Because if we can all agree that we've got 1 million tourists that come in here every, how many? I don't know, 365 by one. That's so many people coming into the country every day, and they're just looking for things to do, and there is nothing to do. Where are we putting our money? In nice cars, nice houses. You know, our idea of wealth is skewed on that. So people with raw capital would be looking at, okay, yeah, Mutarazi is already nice and proper, and people want to go there. How can we make them stay for 5 days? Attraction.
I mean, you go to Sun City, you go to Cape Town. You know, like, you don't want to leave.
Yes.
But I mean, you're a parent, and let's talk about the youth in Zimbabwe currently. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the drugs. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about even the content they're listening to. How do we approach the? Because it's now a pandemic. Mm-hmm. As much as, you know, we wanna skirt around it. It's a pandemic. Drugs are a pandemic in this country. How do we deal with that?
The luck that we have as a country in Zimbabwe is our drug pandemic is hitting us late. We've seen other countries go through it, try and solve it, fail, and try again. And the luck that we've got right now is we've seen what works and what doesn't. Drugs are both a consequence and a cause of social issues. So they are both a result of social issues, socio-economic issues we have in this country, but they also cause problems in their own right. And we've seen so many countries try and do it. The United States had the war on drugs. It didn't work. They realized after some time that you can bring in as many guns and incarcerate as many people as you want. That's not going to work. So they changed and said, okay, what if we legalize it? What if we legalize this? And when we start legalizing that, Switzerland is thinking about legalizing cocaine. Right? So they've realized that the hard and fast won't do it. What else can we do to fight? So we can learn from so much. We don't even have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to drugs.
No, but just to push back on that, right? We can learn, but the problem is that when those guys are being hit by Nyope, right? When those guys are being hit by when the war on drugs, crack pandemic in the 70s in the States and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. They had no algorithm. These kids have the algorithm. So now they're even inventing new drugs right now. Like, trust me, like, someone is now saying, yo, if you mix Red Bull and a bit of Learn and I do a bit of Percocets, I mean, like, they're making new things. So, I mean, it's very hard to control currently. Because, I mean, imagine people are even getting their drugs in their mail.
True. So what's interesting about the algorithm, and I said this earlier, is the algorithm is a tool, right? It can be used either way, right? So we can use the algorithm, or the algorithm can be used to peddle drugs, but it can also be used to peddle information about drugs. So, for example, there's a reason why you do not do drugs, okay? You probably got that information from somewhere. It probably was.
Oh, yeah, there is a reason why I don't do drugs, to be very honest with you.
Yeah. Why is that?
Yeah?
No,
I just, as a young man, I once experimented with weed, and then the next thing I couldn't stop bathing because I never found out pera. So I just had, so it's one of those things. I tried it once, and I was like, nah, it's not for me.
So it's these stories, right, that keep young people away from weed. There's a reason you don't do it. It's not because you had a conversation with your parents and they were like, don't do drugs, because that conversation would not have worked.
I would actually be more inspired to do drugs
if
someone told me don't do drugs. Yeah. And the other things, drugs are not stopped by I find this say no to drugs concepts a bit redundant, but anyway.
No, they can be. The best way to preach about drugs is to see what you can become when drugs take over your life, and drugs can take over your life. So we can use the algorithm, we can use social media and it to actually have people see the other side of drugs. Because when people are selling you drugs or people are trying to get you into drugs, they're telling you about the fun. They're telling you about all the things that, you're going to have, you're going to have a good time, you're going to be awake for 24 hours, you're going to do this, you're going to be more creative. But what is the other side? What is the watershed of that? What happens after that? And we can still use the algorithm. The point is, or what's lacking within our communication with this issue, and this issue isn't going away, by the way, is, we, like you're saying, we have redundant messages. Don't do drugs. CNN Dombo. And so on. But I haven't even tried it. Okay? What has it done to anybody? How has it ruined someone's life? How has it ruined someone's future? How has it ruined someone's health? Do we have stats saying that, listen, ever since we had the Dombo pandemic, so many people are dying from drugs each and every single day? So that you think about it. We had a fantastic campaign on HIV that lasted years. And the reason why Zimbabwe is what do you call it? 95? Is because there was a fantastic campaign that happened.
Murume chaye anomirira.
And
up to this day, I still abide by those by that message.
Yeah, you're probably traumatized. So there was a fantastic campaign we did, and we can also learn from that, where the messaging around HIV/AIDS was everywhere.
And speaking of that, who should be teaching these kids hard work? You know what I mean? Like, we grew up in an era whereby you had to work hard. You had to work hard to get the girl you wanted. You had to work hard to get the grades you wanted in school. You had to work hard to get out of the hood that you're staying in, to get to a better hood. You had to work hard to actually get to the payphone to actually make a call to the girl that you liked. Like, it was like nothing came easy. You had to work hard to even get in the classroom. I remember Susu takapinda grade 1 nekubata nzeve kuside kuno. Where you had to work hard, because I remember typing up class multiple choice.
Yes.
So whose duty is it to teach these kids to work hard in an environment where parents are working so hard to make ends meet and the algorithm is raising your kids? Sorry, I sound very, but
that's actually true. The algorithm is raising our kids. So the luck that we had, and I think I can speak on your behalf as well, was when we were growing up, we were horizontally exposed. We were exposed to Vanvemara in Medu. The people that had the most money when we were growing up was the people that had the corner house and the satellite dish and the nice car, right? Those are the people that we're exposed to. Kids today are being vertically exposed. They can see the best of what's happening in the world today, right? So it was my daughter's birthday 2 days ago. She wants an iPhone. It took me a lifetime to afford an iPhone, right? But she's being vertically exposed where everybody has an iPhone. And she thinks,
feels entitled. She expects you to pay for the iTunes and the Netflix on the iPhone and the data to even run the iPhone.
You see, and I'm like, young lady, I worked hard to get this phone.
You worked hard to get a 3310, but
thank you, right? And she
BlackBerry Curve, and
it's because she's so vertically exposed and she thinks everybody has it and everybody's doing it, and so in a way, these kids have a disadvantage, as in they are seeing the best of what the world has to offer right on their doorstep. And we had to learn that. The first time that I learned that, there was Borodale, right? Like, it blew my mind. There were
Inina grew up in which is that Avondale was the one.
Yeah.
At the end of Avondale, to Ramas Mask to Trumbuno Shigapa Avondale.
You see, I remember I told my friend one time, first time that I went to Brook, I was like, my guy, there are houses on hills, right? So I'm horizontally exposed. The nicest house in my street were the wealthiest people that I knew, right? But I got to experience the world. My friend, there are houses that are on hills. And do you know what he did? He cycled to Borodo to go and see for himself. I think we're around 14, 15. Because we had not seen it. But these kids, the moment they open their phone, they can see it. So teaching hard work in an era like that is extremely difficult. However, what I tell my daughter is, I don't come from money or connections or people that, I didn't have any advantages growing up. The only advantage that I had personally was I could work harder than the next guy. Whoever the next guy was, I could work harder, longer. I could sleep less. That was my advantage. That's what got me some breakthroughs and opportunities. And that's what got me recognized by some people who say, wow, this kid. So whenever you have an opportunity, a gap, right, work twice as hard as next.
No. Don't try it and say a gap. Want a gap. So, speaking of gaps and that, and like, let's talk about meritocracy and our government. Like, are we giving people who deserve to be in positions the positions to do the jobs that need to be done? Two, just to pile up to slide in another question on top of that one. Are we doing a good job as the government of Zimbabwe? Is the government of Zimbabwe doing a good job in communicating its ideas, its ideals, its vision to the people? Or it's just somewhere, but that is like you talk of like the American dream, you can talk of a white picket fence and how to make it and etc.
So to answer your first question on meritocracy, where are Zimbabwe's most competent people right now?
That was going to be my next question, but continue.
Okay, good. They're in the corporate sector.
All right.
Right? They are running businesses, they're CEOs, they're GMs, right? These are people with competent, proven track records, right? Some of them are in international NGOs and so on and so on. How do we attract those people to government? How do we attract those people to run ministries, right? We cannot attract them by saying, join this particular party so that you have a chance at being permanent secretary. But we are leaving out the good brains outside because we're having to have people go through political processes to be able to have a shot at that. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So how do you attract good talent? Is you remove the politics from the roles. That's number one. Okay? Number two, you pay them enough so that the position becomes attractive.
All right.
You pay them enough so that becoming a deputy minister of something is such an attractive thing for them to want to aspire to. But I don't have to become a deputy minister because, then I have to go into politics. Because unfortunately for Zimbabwe, politics is dirty. So I don't want to go through dirty politics or campaign and so on to be able to get the position. So give them enough money, remove politics from the roles, and you're going to have some very clever people, competent people wanting to join government. If we do that, I don't know why we modeled our governance around politics and politics only, where if you're not part of the party, you have no shot at being the deputy minister.
Let's talk diaspora. How much competent people are we exporting to the diaspora, and how can those people invest back into the country?
So the diaspora is actually a big pain point for me personally, because we are exporting some of our best brains outside, and they don't have the potential to even realize that, because we're exporting them for bread and butter, and we're exporting them so that they can fix our, issues, bread and butter issues back home. So it's actually a huge pain point for me. And an actual overhaul of our politics can bring people back, because half the reason why people leave the country is not just economics and finance. I don't have a job. Some of it is this situation is not going to change, because people find opportunity when something changes and say, oh, okay, I want you to give you an example right now. If the government changes right now today, how many people in the diaspora will be like, oh, I can come back to Zimbabwe, even without a tangible opportunity? Things just look very gloomy for everybody that's leaving. I don't think anybody is really excited about, oh, I'm going to leave and work in a low-paying job somewhere in the country so that I can take care of my parents back home. That's not exciting for us. It's not something that anybody wants to do, but we have to do it. There are many opportunities in Zimbabwe, and just to answer your question, the government communication, there are many opportunities in Zimbabwe outside of farming, many opportunities in mining. That's why you've got all these people coming into the country. There are opportunities in them, but as long as they're not being communicated, and government isn't taking the first step in helping those people. I think there was a group of diasporans that tried to buy the NRZ at some point. These are competent Zimbabweans with capital that want to buy one of our forlorn state enterprises and turn it into something profitable because they can see the profit, right? And that deal did not happen because of somebody. So, because of our politics. So, yeah.
And what books are you currently reading right now?
I'm rereading Stephen.
That's okay. You can say the Bible.
Well, I actually haven't read the Bible in a while, but I've read the Bible enough times, so I have an idea of what happens in there. It's a story about a guy. But right now I'm reading Stephen Covey's How to Influence People. I'm reading it, I think, maybe for the 10th time in my life. I'm reading Lance Armstrong's How I Got Back to Life. And yeah, I think I've got 2 more that I'm like sort of, reading 10 pages at a time.
I plan on writing a book.
I've got 2 books in my mind. The other one, the first one, is a second edition of my cookbook. I wrote a cookbook in 2019. I'm passionate about cooking, by the way. I'm passionate about men cooking, particularly. So it's a cookbook for men. It's called An African Man Walked Into the Kitchen. It's encouraging men to cook. I think we can benefit a lot as a gender if we learn to do that for ourselves. So that'll be the second edition.
One of our camera guys is a very good cook. Yesterday he cooked a 5-star meal, like...
Really?
Yeah, Wellies, they...
People say that people who cook make better husbands and better boyfriends.
I've never been a husband, but I'll try experimenting. Thanks for the tip.
Yeah. They say, it's just top marks all around.
Serious?
Yeah. So that's what they say. Yeah, so I encourage men to cook.
And the 2 things that you love about this country?
The spirit of resilience on them. It's sad at the same time, but we are a people. We have gone through it, man.
You're the second person to say that today, but continue.
Yeah, we have gone through it. We have gone through things that would destroy other nations. We've gone through things that have plunged other nations into war, and so on. But number one, the resilience, and also it's a really beautiful country. It's a gorgeous country. You can testify from your recent holiday. Gorgeous country. I think, that. Mm-hmm.
And who do you think is winning the upcoming South African elections? Do you think the ANC is getting back into power?
Yes. So South Africans are going to have the shock of their lives when they finally realize that revolutionary parties are not that easy to remove.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Paul, thank you much for hanging with me. It's been a pleasure. Guys, if you're offended, that's cool. If you were inspired, that's cool. This has been The Bold Exchange.